Letitia James. Letitia! We haven't talked about her in a while, right? She's so hard up for cash. Woman's out of money. I mean, not only is New York out of money, but Letitia personally is out of money, which, you know, how do we say, is kind of fitting in light of what we all had to go through, right?
He's called me venomous.
We will fight back to your attempt to bring Trumpism to New York City.
He's called me disgraceful.
Of the fact that they stole the Supreme Court seat. An illegitimate president and an illegitimate member of the United States Supreme Court.
He's called me radical.
Listen, we know he's crazy. We know he doesn't have a sound mind. We know he's out of control. We know he's losing it. We know his days are numbered and we will come together.
He's called me a racist.
We've got to stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale. Too male, too pale, and too stale. Too male, too pale, and too stale.
Thank you.
Letitia, what do you do now? What do you do now? Because you don't have any money to fight your big legal case. Well, she's turning to the Legal Defense Fund amid this scrutiny from Donald Trump, which is worth knowing only because a lot of big fancy pants, law firms demand that their young associates contribute to the Legal Defense Fund. And I would just say, be careful what you're getting into, because that Legal Defense Fund actually is sending money in some peculiar places at time. Like, thank you, 200 Watt Studio. You like the dress, right? I figured, the Grim Reaper, we could do Catwoman over here. Why not, right? It's October. We're getting into Halloween. Anyway, she is struggling because she's got a very high-priced lawyer. A very high-priced lawyer. His name is Abbe Lowell. And Abbe Lowell is the guy who also represented Hunter Biden. And so that gives you some perspective on his clout, right? And Abbe Lowell is charging a lot of money. I mean, I'm guessing probably somewhere around maybe $5,000 an hour. I don't know that. I'm just, and maybe I'm factoring in inflation, because in the old days, high-priced attorneys were $1,000 an hour. So I'm figuring he might be in the $5,000 an hour range. Well, he's riding this one all the way to the bank as well, because you see, he is now out there soliciting on behalf of Letitia James at the Legal Defense Fund. He's trying to drum up some support for her because, he thinks that this is, of course, super duper necessary in light of all the victimhood that she is being put under. Yeah. Let me see if I have some more to show you on this. I do, because I want to get to some of his quotes here. If you look at the Gothamist, which was the first to report this, and we, by the way, reported, they were the first to report about she's out of money and she's going to the Legal Defense Fund. But if you look back in August, we were reporting on how the comptroller there in New York City was saying, wait a second, what are we doing? They used $1 million of taxpayer funds for an outside legal firm to work on her behalf, to represent her in a personal matter, which is totally outrageous, okay? And then investigators were look at this, $1,650 an hour for his work. That was one of the attorneys. That wasn't Lowell. That wasn't Abbe Lowell. But apparently one of her attorneys from Munger, Tolles, and Olson, who was in charge of responding to some of the subpoenas, he was charging $1,650 an hour. So I guess she cheaped out there, right? Because Abbe would have been more like $5,000. Investigators in the Albany-based probe, this is the one that's saying, wait a second, you violated a person's civil rights, the civil rights of DJT, Donald J. Trump, because you were so malicious in your prosecution going after him. And so that's a case that they've also brought against her. And then the NRA, I guess, also has a case additionally I mean, she's got a lot of legal challenges right now, and I don't think anyone should feel bad for her for 2 seconds because she clearly brought it on. Her election campaign and re-election campaign was all about going after Trump. She's been soliciting now with texts and emails anyone who's on her list to try and get more money to, quote, go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and his allies who believe they're above the law. So the Legal Defense Fund, the reason why this is of interest, they're supposed to be a little different. As Gothamist writes, quote, donors won't be subject to state laws that limit campaign contributions and require public disclosure. Oh, so that means, Soros or anybody else with deep pockets, right, can just give a ton of money to the Legal Defense Fund, probably get a tax credit for it. And then, what do you know? She gets her high-priced, more expensive attorney, Abby Lowell, working around the clock. So he'll do well out of all this. New York City has regulations for legal defense funds set up by elected officials, including Mayor Eric Adams, but there is no parallel, they write, for state officials. The Democratic Attorney General's Association said contributions would be routed through a 527 organization and will be disclosed in an annual filing. That kind of organization can accept unlimited donations from individuals, corporations, and labor unions in order to influence politics, appointments, and elections. Now, money from the funds will go to cover her fees, or rather, Abby's fees, the fees incurred by Abby Lowell's law firm. A spokesperson, they write, for the Attorney General's office says James was declining to tap up the $10 million appropriation included in the state budget for officials subject to retaliatory investigations. You see, she started to realize that had a little stink around it. Remember, she wanted $10 million from New York taxpayers to cover her personal legal bills. Think of the craziness of that. I mean, there she was trying to bankrupt Donald Trump. I mean, we do have an Eighth Amendment that basically doesn't allow for that, right? The Eighth Amendment, which says you cannot have these crazy, crazy punishments like she tried to inflict. I mean, look, or the Fifth Amendment, right? Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. In other words, the government cannot just take your private property, and that was one of the things they were doing. And then the Eighth Amendment was like, you can't have just crazy, wacky punishments that are not sort of in line with the alleged crime. So that's why her case got thrown out of court, as I told you it would. And she's appealing it, of course. And, she's in tough shape. She's in tough shape because allegedly she went to Virginia and took out a mortgage and said it was her primary residence while being the Attorney General in New York. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. She says, oh, no, nothing to see here. Just Clara.
Donald Trump said that he said that he called me all kind of names. And he basically directed the Department of Justice to investigate my affairs. And they're using mortgage fraud as the vehicle upon which they're investigating myself, Adam Schiff, Miss Cook, Lisa Cook, and countless others. And it is, most of it, as you know, is frivolous. It's baseless because in order to prove mortgage fraud, one has to prove intent. And that's a very high standard, a very high bar to meet.
I don't know. I mean, because it happened a few times, didn't it? What about in New York? Oh, yeah, it did happen in New York. You see, you tried to say that you had a home with 5 levels, was it, instead of 4? Or vice versa, actually 4 levels instead of 5, because it would qualify you for some better kind of mortgage. I mean, it's actually caused Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to leave the state of New York. That just coming out today. News that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are closing their New York offices because of Attorney General Letitia James and her, quote, corrupt actions. Woo! Okay, so this is interesting. So this news is, of course, just out today. And apparently sources at the Federal Housing Authority, or FHFA, I should say, are quoted saying basically that, they're shutting down. Here's what they told Fox Digital. We are shutting down the 2 New York offices for Fannie and Freddie as a result of Letitia James's, corrupt and dangerous business practices in the state. So federal mortgage offices live in New York over Letitia. They say they'll still actually do business there, but they're not physically going to be present there anymore because they get an attorney general who's clearly, if these allegations are proven to be true, rather corrupt.